Hello, it's Adedoyin Jaiyesimi here, and we're almost midway into 2023. And it's really a great time for you to start assessing your communication strategy and see what's working and what's not working before the end of the year comes, where you really can't do anything about it. So if the last time you went through your strategy document was at the beginning of the year, this is a good time to look at it. And in this video, I will just share some tips on what you can do if you realize that your communication strategy for the year isn't working, and there are many reasons why that may be the case. But one of the first things that I would say is you need to go back to the objectives that you set. What objectives did you have? What objectives did you set for the year? What did you want to achieve? And if you've been watching my video, you know I'm always talking about setting objectives that align with what your organization wants to achieve. So you need to go back and say, what did we set out to achieve? What were the numbers? What were the metrics that we said? What were the markers of success in terms of brand awareness, brand equity, in terms of understanding, in terms of loyalty, whatever it is that you had stated in your objectives? You need to go back, and if you realize that you didn't set measurable objectives at the beginning of the year, that may also be a reason why you believe that, or why it may appear that your comm strategy is not working, because you haven't set measurable objectives. So it's difficult to articulate success. It's difficult to say, oh, this is how far we've come, this is what we've done. So please go back and look at what it is that you put as your objectives, and if your objectives are not measurable, please, this is a great time to rework your objectives with the relevant stakeholders. And I have a video on YouTube as well as a course that will take you through how to set measurable objectives. So after you've looked at the objectives that you set for your communication strategy, a reason why your strategy may not be working is that the premise on which that strategy was based or created on is either flawed or it has changed. And I always say that communication strategy, it's a living, breathing thing. It's not something that you do at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, and go to sleep. Why? Because things are always changing. Macroeconomic situations are changing literally across the world. If you turn on the news, it feels like every country is going through something, and that affects your organization, that affects your staff, that affects your clients, that affects key stakeholders. So you must be able to be clear, what were the assumptions that we made, that we based this strategy on? Have those assumptions changed? Has the premise changed? Or was it even flawed in the very beginning? Once you're able to establish that, you can see where changes are or where changes need to be made. So if you said, for example, you wanted to increase maybe adoption, brand awareness, subscription by 25%, or by the end of the year you want to have built a customer base of 100,000 people, and then you realize that the macroeconomic situations or whatever it is would not allow you to achieve that, you can bring it down a bit. I know it's not such a great thing to bring it down, but if you're realistic, and remember, part of setting smart objectives is for your objectives to be realistic. So you have to look at, the situation internally and externally and say, what is realistic for us to achieve? And remember, you're going into June, so you have between June and October, for some of you November, to achieve what you say you want to achieve. So if you've said at the beginning of the year you want 100,000 maybe new customers through your activations and through your activities by the end of the year, and right now as we're going into June you're barely at 30,000, you might as well just come down a bit, So those are the things that you need to really check: the premise, the assumptions, what has changed. Do you need to mark some things down, bring some of the figures down? Do you even need to extend the timeline? Maybe instead of having the cutoff point as December 2023, do we want to extend this into something that will also take over into 2024? But adjustments may need to be made if the strategy isn't working. Another reason why your communication strategy may not be working, simply because of changes in the organization, and as I said in the first point, changes in the political landscape, changes in the global conversation, the global terrain, and all of that. So for example, in Nigeria, we've just had a change of government, and in the next few weeks and months, what may happen is that there will be policies that will be laid out, or laws that will come out that may affect organizations, and that in turn will affect your communication strategy. That will in turn would affect your objectives. So you must be aware, right? So I hope you see that you can't just be oblivious to what's happening around or within your organization. It's the same thing if you have a new CEO, or there's a reshuffling of your board, or you get a new senior leader that wants to make a mark immediately in their first 100 days. That is going to affect the strategy that you've created at the beginning of the year. So you need to look at these things. So when there are changes in the political landscape, there are changes, even globally. If you study global trends, every month I'm always looking at what are the trends, what are people talking about, what's happening, how is the conversation and adoption of artificial intelligence, how is it advancing, how is it affecting my work, how is it affecting our industry, how is it affecting our organization and our customers, and then you're able to make certain tweaks. But if you don't know, you wouldn't know what changes to make to your strategy, so that at the end of the year, it's not looking like comms didn't do anything. So the third reason why your communication strategy may not be working, it can simply be that your key messages are not resonating with your target audience and your key stakeholders. And that's why it's very, very important when you are developing your key messages to be able to test them. I will do a video very soon on key message development and testing, but you must be able to test. And after you test and after you deploy your key messages, you need to understand whether it's resonating or it's not resonating. And to be able to find this out now, you would need to do a communications audit. So if you've not watched my video on communications audit, please do. By the end of this video, I will tell you about the course, which is now ready. Yes, it took some time, but the comms audit course is now ready. When you do a communications audit, you'll be able to do surveys, interviews, and just get feedback from your customers, from your key stakeholders, and just find out really is my key message resonating. One of the ways to know that your key message is not resonating is that they're not responding, people are not engaging. There's probably a disconnect. You're not speaking to their heart. You're not speaking to what it is that they need or what it is that they want. So it's very, very easy for them to just gloss over your key messages and all of that. Another way to know that your key message is not working or resonating is that if you Google your organization, or if you do some social media listening, the narrative that you find, or the conversations, the keywords that you see being used for your organization is so far from what your key message is meant to be. So that already should make alarm bells go off to say, look, something is off with our key messages. And when you do the testing, when you do the surveys, you'll be able to know what exactly it is that you need to fix. So it may not be that the strategy is bad. It may just mean you just need to tweak your key messaging. And tied to that may be changes within your target audience. Consumers are going through a lot of changes. Consumption spend is decreasing in certain countries. Challenges are different, priorities are different. So maybe at the beginning of the year, if their priorities have changed, and you set your key messages based on the previous priorities, it's not going to resonate anymore. So you need to do that analysis over again, and a communications audit will actually help you to spot those gaps and be able to know how to close those gaps. So look at your key messages, ask if it is resonating, and check if the priorities of your target audience is still the same. That's another reason why your communication strategy is not being effective. You're not speaking their language, or you're speaking a language that is like they've left that place that you're speaking to. So you must be able to make the adjustments, interact. I always say you have to stay connected with your audience. You have to stay on top of getting audience insights, because that is what will help you. Another reason why your communication strategy may not be working may simply be that the objectives you set were not realistic and were not achievable. One of the things that I've seen sometimes when we're setting objectives at the beginning of the year is that we want to just goal. We want to be number one. We want to have XYZ. We want to increase brand awareness by 200%. We want to do all of the great stuff, and that's absolutely fantastic. But you must come back, and that's why a key part of setting measurable objectives are asking yourself, is this achievable? Is this realistic? If you're the only comms person, if your organization doesn't have the budget that is required for you to achieve the objectives that you set, then you're not going to achieve it. It's not you, but you've not set realistic objectives. So go back to your objective and really ask yourself, based on where we are now, based on the human and financial resources that we have, are these objectives really, really realistic? Is it realistic for us to spread ourselves so thin in terms of our tactics? Do we have too many tactics in this strategy? Should we just focus for the rest of the year, focus on 2 of our tactics, focus on 3 channels, and see what that brings us? Because you may just find that little change may make the biggest difference in the effectiveness of your strategy. So look at your objectives, determine if it's really, really achievable in the context of everything I've said, in the context of your organization, in the context of what's even happening within the macroeconomic space, political space, everything that's happening, and say to yourself, is it really, really realistic? And if you need to make the changes, just make the changes. If you've put there 10 tactics, I know it sounds great, we're going to do campaigns, we're going to do events, we're going to do da, but if you're not able to do it all at the end of the year, they're just going to say, oh, you guys didn't do anything. So do you want to cut back and say, look, let's be more efficient, let's focus on these channels, let's focus on these tactics, and then let's see. So you give yourself another 3 months, and in 3 months you're going to come back and say, how are we doing? And that's how you make sure that at the end of the year you're not blindsided, because you're already making tweaks and changes as you're going. So I hope these few tips have been helpful for you. Just as a recap, go back to your objectives, understand what your objectives were at the beginning of the year, look at the external factors. So part of a comms planning process is that you look at external factors. I have a video on this which you can watch to know what are the external factors you need to look through, what has changed in those external factors, whether it is economic, whether it is political, whether it is social, and how is that impacting on your organization and the industry. Has the assumptions and the premise on which your strategy was based, have there been any kind of changes? The priorities of your target audience and your key stakeholders, have they changed in any way? Your objectives, were they realistic? Were they achievable in the first place? Do you have all the resources that you need to be able to implement this strategy? Do you need to streamline and cut back on the tactics and the channels that you want to focus on? With these tips and with these adjustments, I believe that you'll be set on track to ensuring that you achieve your communication strategy for the year. And as I mentioned before, a good way to be able to know where the gaps are, where the discrepancies are, is by doing a communications audit. It's so beneficial. I always recommend it for an organization. At least do it once or twice a year. It really, really does help you. And I've created a course for the communications audit so that you know how to get the data, how to interpret the data, and how to give recommendations to your senior leaders and organization, which helps you to make your not just your comm strategy effective, but it helps to make your communication function even better. Your organization begins to communicate in a way that resonates with the target audience. You're making sure that you're closing gaps internally and externally. So that course, you would see the details in the description of this YouTube video, and you can click the link on Seller. It's a paid course, it's not free. I have a free video on YouTube, but with that course, there's also a case study to show you how to do it. And I hope that when you do that, when you do the comms audit, when you do the review of what could be wrong or what could be missing, you put yourself on the path to make sure that you end the year on a great note. I would always tell you that comms, we play a very, very important role in any organization, but we must be bringing our A game. We must be measuring what's important to our organization, and we must make sure that we are as effective as possible in the creation and implementation of strategy. And can I just say, when you do a comms audit, it also helps you to advise your organization better. Sometimes organizations don't even pay attention to some of the things that I'm saying, or some of the things that I've shared in this video. But then you can go to your organization and say, look, based on the changes that are happening in the political landscape or in the economic landscape, this is what I believe we should be doing. These are the changes I believe we need to be making. So it also helps you as a communications professional to be effective. So this was just a short video to help you and make sure that by the end of the year, you can really confidently articulate what comms is bringing to the table in any organization. As always, you can always connect with me on my website or via my website, via LinkedIn, or you can send me an email to adedoyin@thecommsavenue.com. So see you in the next video. Bye.